You ever notice how silence doesn't really exist anymore? Even when you switch everything off, TV, phone, computer, there's still that thin, whispering hum in the background. The fridge, the power lines, the neighbor's Wi-Fi, your own blood in your ears. We live wrapped in invisible noise now. I used to love that. My name is John Cavill, and was a ham radio guy. Not just casual. I brought a Baofeng on Amazon guy. I mean deep into it. Antennas in the backyard, wires stapled along rafters in the garage, shelves of radios, old and new. If it transmitted on HF, VHF, UHF, I probably owned it, fixed it, or swore at it. That garage was my place. People talk about man caves. Mine buzzed and clicked and glowed. Coax cables coiled in neat loops, QSL cards pinned on cork boards, an old world map with strings and pins, coffee stains on the bench, and that warm low hum of equipment in standby. And it was there, late one night, half a mug of cold coffee at my elbow, a storm brushing the edge of town, that I heard the first pattern. I was on 40 meters, running my usual late night net. Bunch of us insomniacs and weirdos took turns chatting around 7.2 megahertz. Matt from across town, an older guy named Tom, 2 cities over, a few other popping in and out, just small talk, bad propagation jokes, complaints about work. You'd be amazed how much emotion can ride on a carrier wave. Propagation was trash that night, signals up and down, band fading in and out, so we weren't really pushing it. I was about to sign off when the noise floor dipped just a little. Not like normal fading, it was smoother, like someone turning down a dimmer switch on static. Then I heard it. A rise, a fall, 3 seconds up, 3 seconds down. Not very loud, just under the usual noise, but clean, too clean, like somebody had carved a pattern out of the hiss. I froze, with my hand on the VFO dial. Mark, you copy? I said, keying up. You hearing that? His voice came back a second later, scratchy but solid. Negative, John. Just the usual band noise. You okay over there? You sound weird. I leaned closer to the speaker. The pattern kept cycling. Up, down, up, down. It wasn't a tone. It wasn't a CW. It wasn't any digital mode I knew. Just noise that wasn't noise. I grabbed the notepad and scribbled 7.2, 2341, rising, falling, static. 3 seconds, 3 seconds, only I hear it. Tom, you there? I asked. Yeah, I'm here, Tom said. You boys switching to code or something? I'm not hearing squat. So it was just me. I did the usual checks, switched radios, swapped antennas from the vertical to the dipole, turned off the noise reduction, then turned it back on. Same pattern, faint but there, always there. Eventually, I signed off, told the guys I was tired, lie, and stayed in the garage with the main HF rig turned down low. The pattern ran for another 10 minutes. Toward the end, the timing slipped. 3 up, 3 down, 3 up, 2 down, 3 up, 4 down. Like it was trying something. And then it faded back into normal static and was gone. I told myself it was some weird digital mode, or intermodulation from a far off station, or just my ears playing tricks on me. I went to bed, stared at the ceiling for an hour, and dreamed in white noise. It came back 2 nights later. Same band, same frequency. The net was quieter this time, just me and Mark chatting about some guy selling his rig online. I was mid-sentence when the pattern slid in under my voice, like background music. I stopped talking. "You there, John?" Mark asked after a second. "Band drop out?" "No," I said slowly. "I'm still here. Listen a second. Do you hear anything under me? A pattern?" He paused. "No, just you, annoyingly as always." I turned my own monitor audio up. The pattern was clearer this time, more assertive. My voice sat on top of it like a layer, and beneath it, that rise and fall kept going. Up, down, steady, mechanical. But the rhythm was changing. It almost sounded like syllables, like someone trying to form words, except instead of vowels and consonants, they only had hiss to work with. After we signed off, I hit record on my laptop and sat in silence, listening. The pattern grew louder as the band quieted. Sometimes it slipped off frequency, just a tiny bit. A few hertz, but then snapped back like it was correcting itself. After about 20 minutes, something changed. The rising static narrowed, sharpening into a tight, hissy band. The falling part broadened. There was a stutter at the top and bottom of each cycle. It was weird enough that my skin prickled. I leaned in so close my nose almost touched the speaker grill. And then I heard it. Not clearly, not like a human voice saying, "Hello, John." Nothing that direct. Just a shape in the static that my brain mapped onto the closest thing it knew. I heard my own name whispered underneath the noise. Jn. I jerked back so fast I knocked my coffee over. It splashed across the bench, missing the rig by an inch. "Nope," I muttered. "Nope, nope, nope." I stopped the recording, saved it, and shut everything down. The pattern stopped the instant my rig went off. The next day, I tried to be rational. I loaded the recording into my audio software, zoomed in, listened to the same 10 seconds over and over. I told myself it was auditory pareidolia, like seeing faces in clouds but with sound. Of course my brain wanted to hear something. But once I'd heard that almost name, I couldn't unhear it. I emailed the clip to Mark and Tom. "Tell me what you hear," I wrote. "Don't overthink it." They got back to me within an hour. Mark: "Sounds like some kind of digital hash. FT8 gone wrong? Not sure." Tom: "Same. Just noise, man. Why?" Nobody else heard it. That night I told myself I wouldn't go into the garage. I'd watch TV, drink a beer, be normal. At 22:30, I was in the garage with the HF rig on, headphones plugged in, staring at the waterfall as the band glowed the shades of blue and green. At 23:12, the noise floor dipped. The pattern came back like it had never left. Up, down, up, down. I swallowed, keyed up and said quietly, "If you are something, and this isn't just my brain, Key up twice. Dead air. Static rose, fell, rose, fell. No change. I laughed at myself, shaky and embarrassed, and started to reach for the power switch. The static rose, held, then dropped, rose, dropped, rose, dropped. 6 quick cycles, like an answer. I didn't sleep much for a while after that. I became obsessed. I logged every appearance of the pattern. It never showed up during the day. Late evening to early morning only. Always in the 40-meter band. Always within a tight range of frequencies around where I usually hung out. It was like it knew where to find me. I tried different things. I whistled into the mic. I sent simple CW, just a few letters. I played a local radio station into the microphone and listened to the static underneath. At first, nothing changed. Then, one night, I noticed that the timing of the rises started to match the cadence of my speech. When I talked faster, the pattern shifted, quickening. When I dragged my words out, the noise dragged too. I'd say hello, and the static would go up and down in a slow, swooping shape that almost matched the syllables. I'd say, who are you? And the static would jitter, rise again, then crash. If it was random, it was doing one hell of a job pretending not to be. I stopped playing canned audio and just talked. I don't even remember half the things I said at first. Basic stuff. My name, my call sign, where I lived. I asked stupid questions, like I was talking to a stray dog or a scared kid. The pattern didn't answer in my language, but it reacted. The timings shifted more and more noticeably around certain phrases. Then, one night, it did something new. It copied me. I was tired, rubbing my eyes with the heel of my hand, half leaning on the desk. I said out loud, "No, Mike Keith, this is stupid." I hadn't realized my thumb was still on the PTT. The rig transmitted my little self-own. The static spiked. For a good 5 seconds, the noise slammed into the top of the meter, full blast. I ripped the headphones off, wincing at the sudden roar. Through the roar, something formed. A smear of syllables. The cadence was wrong, the pitch broken, but it's stupid. The hairs rose on both arms. I stared at the rig like it had slapped me. Very slowly, I pressed the headphones back to my ears. "Say that again," I whispered. The static crackled, hissed. No recognizable words, just that rise and fall. I forced myself to be methodical. I grabbed the notepad, wrote down phrases, timestamps. When the static spiked, when it didn't, over the next few nights, it got better. Not good, not like a clear voice, but close enough that once I knew what phrase it was echoing, I could hear the ghost of it in the noise. Sometimes it repeated me within a second or two, sometimes minutes later, like it was chewing on the sound and spitting it back out. The worst part? It always sounded a little like me. Not perfectly, like a bad recording played through a broken speaker, but it had my rhythm, my weird little emphasis on certain words. I stopped playing music or other people's voices into the mic. Not because I wasn't curious if it would mimic them too, but because some instinct in my gut screamed that feeding it more voices was a bad idea. I kept it between me and the static. About 2 weeks into this nonsense, I brought someone else into the garage. Mark. He wasn't just a random ham buddy. We'd known each other 10 years. He'd helped me mount my first HF antenna, drank beers in this same garage more times than I could count. He was ex-army, practical, suspicious of anything that smelled like ghost stories. Perfect reality check. He showed up around 10 with a six-pack under one arm and that "this better be good" look on his face. "All right," he said, dropping into the folding chair beside me. "What's got your panties twisted? You've been sending me recordings like a madman. It's noise, man." "Just listen," I said. I tuned to where the pattern usually showed up, turned the volume up a little, handed him a set of headphones. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. Just normal band hash, a couple of wee conversations, in the distance, a bit of digital splatter. Mark shot me a look. "John." "Keep listening," I said, trying not to sound as desperate as I felt. At 23:06, the noise floor dipped. I saw it on the S-meter before I heard it. Just that slight and natural smoothing. Then it started. Up, down, up, down. Mark's eyebrows went up. "Okay," he said slowly. "That's weird. You injecting something in here?" "Nope. Antenna's live." We listened. The pattern ran for a full minute, steady as a metronome. "Watch this," I said. I keyed up. "Hello? This is John. If you hear me, respond." I let go of the PTT. The static rose, held a half beat longer than before, then fell. Rose, fell. The timing slipped, enough to be noticeable. Mark frowned. "Could be some digital mode reacting to your carrier," he said. "Some weird PSK thing. Still, just noise." "Listen for words," I said quietly. "Not English, just shapes." He gave me a skeptical look but leaned in. "Say something else," he muttered. I swallowed. My mouth was dry. "What are you?" I asked, keying up. "What do you want?" The instant I unkeyed, the static blew out the top of the meter, like someone had opened a valve. For several seconds, it was pure, deafening white noise. Then, slowly, under the roar, a crease formed, a hollow, a thin valley where certain frequencies dropped. My own voice crawled out of that valley, broken and wrong. What? You?" The rest dissolved in a tearing sound, like a radio being ripped in half. Mark jerked, ripping the headphones off like they'd burned him. "What the hell was that?" "You heard it?" I said. My voice didn't sound like my own anymore. "You actually heard it?" He stared at me. The color had drained from his face. "That thing just... that was you," he said. "It sounded like someone trying to do an impression of you through a blender." He glanced at the rig, turned it off himself. The garage felt brutally quiet without the hum. "Okay," he said finally. Okay, that's not digital. Or if it is, it's something freaky. It's been doing that, I said, getting better at it. Only I heard it before. Why didn't Tom hear it? He asked. Or the others? I shrugged helplessly. I don't know, but you hear it now. That's something. Something, he echoed. Yeah. He took a long pull from his beer, staring at the dark windows of the garage, like he expected faces to press against them. Maybe it's some kind of feedback loop, he said, between your audio and the noise floor, like, I don't know, your rig, your shack, something's making a weird pattern that only you can hear, and now I'm primed to hear it too. That would have been a comforting explanation before it started saying my words, I said. We both jumped when my scanner crackled from the shelf behind us. It wasn't tuned to anything important, just scanning airband frequencies out of habit. The squelch broke in a short, sharp burst of static. No voice, just that same, now familiar rise and fall, up, down, up, down. The scanner wasn't connected to the HF antenna. It wasn't anywhere near that circuit. Is that? Mark started. Yeah, I said. My throat felt tight. Yeah, that's it. He slowly set his beer down. When did it start doing that? He asked. I swallowed. That's new. I told myself it was still just in my house. Sure, it had jumped from the HF rig to the scanner, but they were in the same room, same general EM environment. Maybe my whole garage was turning into an RF funhouse. The illusion lasted 2 more days. On the third, I was at work. Normal office job, nothing glamorous. Sitting in my car on lunch break, listening to a local repeater on a handheld. A couple of guys were chatting about antenna tuners. I wasn't really listening. Until the noise floor dipped. My fingers tightened around the radio. The pattern slipped in under their conversation like a knife under skin. Quiet, but there. Up, down, up, down. I recognized it instantly. The guys on frequency kept talking, oblivious. Are you hearing that? I blurted, keying up before I could stop myself. That modulation in the noise? Some kind of pattern? There was a short pause. Negative, one of them said. Just you, John. You picking up something weird? Probably just my end, I said weakly. Forget it. It followed me home. Not on every band, not all the time, but there were more and more instances where I'd be idly listening to something, a weather broadcast, the local police dispatch, the tower at the small airport on the edge of town, and I'd hear it. Always under, always in the noise, always that same slow, deliberate pattern. I stopped sleeping properly. My dreams were just layered static now, my own voice echoing back at me from 1,000 slightly wrong throats. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and know that if I went to the garage and powered up, it would be there, waiting. Sometimes I went, sometimes I didn't. It started to say more than just my own words. I'd catch fragments, syllables I didn't recognize, sounds that weren't quite English or any language I knew. Sometimes it would mash bits of my phrases together into nonsense. Sometimes it would stretch a single word out into a 10-second screech. Then, one night, it called me when everything was off. I was in the kitchen, half asleep, pouring water into the coffee machine for the morning. Outside, the wind was picking up. A storm was rolling in. The house felt heavier, like the air pressure had dropped. I heard my own voice from the garage. "John." I froze. The coffee pot clinked against the machine as my hand jerked. My first thought was that I'd left something on. A YouTube video? A recording? I walked down the hall and pushed open the door to the garage. Dark. Silent. The rigs were off. The scanner dark. The only light came from the thin line under the garage door where the streetlight outside bled in. I reached for the overhead light switch. "John." It came again, louder, less like static now, more shaped. "John, come, listen." The voice came from nowhere and everywhere at once. The walls, the ceiling, the dark space under the workbench. No single source I could point to. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Not funny," I croaked. "Who's there?" Silence. I turned the light on with a shaky hand. Nothing moved. Coax coils, tool rack, benches, my familiar little kingdom of electronics and scrap. Then, from the HF rig, dead, powered off, the speaker crackled. One burst, a hiss, a familiar pattern under the impossible noise. Up, down, up, down. That's when I started unplugging things, not just turning them off. I yanked the power strips from the wall, flipped breakers, pulled antenna lines. Within minutes, the garage was electrically dead. No hum, no standby LEDs. Nothing. Still, in the silence, I heard it. Not with my ears, not exactly. More in the pressure behind my eyes. The crawling sensation along my scalp. Up, down, up, down. I told myself I'd take a break from radio. Cold turkey. No HF, no VHF, no nothing. That lasted 3 days. On day 4, my phone buzzed at work. It was Tom. "Hey, you listening to 40 last night?" he asked the moment I picked up. "No," I said, being busy. "Why?" "Some weird URM," he said. "Never heard anything like it. I was on with a couple guys around 7 to 10, and the noise floor started. I don't know, breathing?" I tightened my grip on the phone. "What did it sound like?" He hesitated. "You know how you always talk about that pattern?" he said. "That rise and fall thing you sent us recordings of? It was kind of like that, only louder, and one of the guys swore he heard it say something." My stomach dropped. "What?" "Your name," Tom said. He thought he heard it say John. He laughed it off, but thought you'd be interested. I sat there with the phone pressed to my ear, feeling suddenly like the office walls were too close. "It's not just here anymore," I said quietly. "What?" "Nothing," I said quickly. "Listen, if you hear it again, record it and don't talk to it. Just don't." "You're starting to freak me out, man," he said, half joking. "Yeah," I said. "Join the club." That night, I went back into the garage, like a man walking willingly into a trap. I plugged the rigs back in, hooked the antennas back up, sat down, took a breath, and flipped the HF rig on. The band roared into life. Normal chaos, voices, whistles, digital beeps. For a moment, it was comforting, like walking into a crowded bar. Then the noise floor dipped. The crowd thinned. Signals faded. Up, down, up, down. This time something else slipped in on top of it. John. But the tone was slightly different. Not my voice. Deeper, slower, like someone else trying to say my name through the same broken speaker. Who else can hear you? I asked, keying up. My finger shook on the PTT. Who are you talking to? The static surged, then split. For the first time I heard more than one layer of it. Two patterns overlapping. One slightly faster and one slower. They tangled, rose, fell, fought. Faintly, under all of it, I thought I heard someone else shout something. Just a syllable or two, before the whole thing crashed into noise again. When it cleared, the pattern was back to normal. Up, down, up, down. I realized then that it wasn't just using the band. It was in it, everywhere, sliding between signals, not tied to my shack or my equipment. I wasn't the only one hearing it anymore. I was just the one it had started with. The first person it killed was Tom. Officially, it was an accident. He was working on his tower. He'd mentioned it a dozen times on the net. Loose bolt, rot in one of the supports, the usual maintenance. He went up one afternoon, clear day, no storm, no wind. Something went wrong. The story I heard later didn't match the photos. They said he slipped, that he reached too far for a tool, lost his balance and fell, that he hit the ground badly and broke his neck. But the EMT, who knew a friend of mine, said his burns were odd. Burns on a fall. They found him at the base of the tower, with his hands still gripping a section of ladder so tightly they had to pry his fingers off. The skin on his fingertips was blackened. There were branching, lightning-like marks up his arms, across his chest, down his legs. Like Lichtenberg figures, the kind you see on people struck by lightning. Except there'd been no storm, no lightning. His equipment was fine. His tower was grounded properly. Nothing else in his yard showed any sign of a surge. Just him. A few days later, someone in the local ham club brought it up on the air. A kind of on-air memorial. People shared stories about Tom, little jokes, old QSO memories. I listened in silence. Toward the end, there was a moment of quiet as one guy choked up and stopped mid-sentence. Into that quiet, the noise floor dipped. Up, down, louder than I'd ever heard it. Do you guys hear that? Someone asked, uneasy. Yeah, another said. Weird. I watched the S-meter on my rig slam into the red. The static rose higher, then broke, like a wave cresting. Out of that crashing hiss came a voice, warped, shredded but recognizable. Not mine this time, Help. Then a tearing sound, a scream made of static and tearing metal. I ripped my headphones off, but I could still hear it muffled, like it was in the air around me. It cut off mid-wail. The band snapped back to normal. People began talking at once, panicked, asking if anyone else had heard. No one said what I was thinking. That for a few seconds, every rig tuned to that frequency had broadcast Tom's last moment, not as a recording, as something alive. After Tom died, I started seeing things. At first, it was just in the corner of my eye, a darker patch near the power lines when I pulled into the driveway at night, a shimmer on the telephone lines when there was no wind. The worst was the first time I saw it directly. It was around 2 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. The static had been particularly bad that night, loud even with the rigs off, like a pressure in my skull. I gave up on pretending to rest and went to the kitchen for water. As I passed the front door, something outside caught my eye. There is a street light across from my house, one of those old sodium lamps that bathes everything in dirty yellow. That night it buzzed quietly, casting its sick light onto the road, the parked cars, the power lines, and something else. At first I thought it was a smudge on the glass, a patch where the darkness was wrong. Then it moved. Out there, under the drooping sky of power lines, was a shape. It was about the size of a person, maybe a little taller, but where a person would have skin, clothes, hair, this thing was made of snow. Not white like TV static, black. A shadow made of crawling, shifting speckles, its edges rippled and bled into the night. Within its outline, tiny points of light flickered like sparks from a welding arc. If you've ever stood too close to an old CRT when it's tuned to a dead channel, you know that faint prickling your skin gets, that ozone smell. That's what seeing this thing felt like, except dialed up to 11. The hair on my arms and the back of my neck stood straight up. My teeth hurt. There was a metallic taste in my mouth. My kitchen radio, off, dialed dark, emitted a faint hiss. The thing stood in the street, head tilted, facing my house. No eyes, no mouth, no real features. But I knew it was looking at me. I knew it knew that I was the one behind the glass. Slowly, it lifted one arm. The hand at the end of it was a jagged crackle of darkness, fingers trailing off into frayed lines like loose wires. It pointed upward. I followed its gesture. Right over its head, the power lines vibrated. The insulators hummed. For a split second, I saw the static pattern in their motion. Up, down, up, down. When I looked back down, the figure was gone. The street was empty. The static in my ears receded, leaving a painful silence. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next day, I called Mark. We need to figure out what this thing is, I said. My voice shook more than I liked. You finally admit it's a thing, he asked, not just noise? I saw it, I said. Outside. I don't know how to explain it. It was like a shadow made of interference. He was quiet for a long moment. I've been hearing it more too, he said, on different bands, even on my car radio once, just for a second, but yeah, it's not just you anymore. I think it's in the lines, I said. Power, phone, coax, all of it. It lives in that infrastructure. That's why we hear it everywhere now. That doesn't make any sense, he said reflexively. Then, more quietly, but I don't have a better idea. Tom, I said, those burns, you saw the photos. They passed around? Yeah. What if it came through his tower, I said, like concentrated itself there, used that as a conduit and, I don't know, discharged into him? Like getting zapped by a living lightning bolt? Mark muttered. Yeah, he sighed. All right, he said. Suppose you're right. We've got some entity in the wires, and it's getting better at talking, better at moving around, and now it's starting to kill people. What do you want to do about it? I don't know yet, I said, but we can't just sit here and wait for it to knock on our walls. You sure it hasn't already? He asked. I didn't answer, because I could hear faint static on the line, even though we were on a cell call. Up, down, up, down. We needed someone who understood power. That was Marx's idea. Look, he said, sitting in my garage one evening, staring at the tangle of cables. We are RF geeks. We know radios, but this thing's clearly using everything. Power lines, transformers, whatever. We need a spark key. I'm not inviting some random electrician into this, I said. What am I supposed to say? Hey, I've got a haunted noise in my antenna. Wanna help? I know someone who might actually buy that, he said. Or at least not walk out laughing. Enter Elena. She wasn't a ham, but she'd done some work for Marx's shop when a breaker panel went bad. Licensed electrician, solid reputation, mid-30s, dark hair pulled back in a functional ponytail. The kind of person who looked at a nest of wires and saw a pattern instead of a headache. She came over one Saturday afternoon, toolbox in hand, eyes taking in the antennas on my roof before she even stepped into the garage. So, she said, setting her tools down, you two dragged me over here on my day off to tell me your radios are haunted? Not haunted, I muttered, just show her, Mark said. We'd planned it around the times the pattern usually showed up. Late evening, band just starting to settle. We hooked a speaker up instead of headphones so all three of us could hear. At first it was just normal band noise. We made small talk. Elena asked basic questions about ham radio, how the HF rig worked, what bands we used. Then, like it had been waiting for an audience, the noise floor dipped. Up, down, up, down. Elena's head snapped toward the speaker. What's that? She asked. We don't know, I said. Listen. I keyed up. My hand was slick with sweat on the mic. This is John, I said. We are here. We are listening. The static surged. John. The voice that crawled out of the noise was worse in the open air. At least in headphones I could pretend it was just in my head. Through the speaker, it filled the garage like mildew, seeping into everything. Holy shit, Elena whispered. It parroted something I'd said the night before, tangled with syllables I didn't recognize. You can't stop. Can't stop. The lights in the garage flickered. The fluorescent tube above us buzzed angrily. Every piece of metal in the room seemed to vibrate, ever so slightly, like an invisible finger dragging along them. I killed the power to the rig. The static didn't stop. It spilled out of the speaker for 3 more seconds, rising in pitch until it was almost ultrasonic, then cut off. Silence crashed in. Elena slowly turned to look at me. You told me this was about an interference problem, she said faintly. To be fair, Mark said, it is interfering. She ignored him. All right, she said, taking a steadying breath. Assuming this isn't some elaborate prank. It's not, I said. Then you're dealing with something that can do 2 very specific things, she said. 1. It can modulate itself into EM noise. 2. It can affect electrical infrastructure, lights flickering, that kind of thing. And kill, I said quietly. She shook her head, obviously wanting to argue, then thinking better of it. You said you saw it, she asked me. Outside, like a shadow? Yeah, I said, under the power lines. She ran a hand through her hair, thinking. Okay, she said, think about what a Faraday cage does. Blocks EM, Mark said. We all know that. Right, she said. It shields whatever's inside from external fields by providing a continuous conductive shell. The fields sort of run around it. Now, if this thing is some kind of emergent field or whatever, living in that environment, it might not be able to pass certain boundaries. It went through Tom's tower, I said. Maybe the path there was favorable, she said. Grounding structure, who knows? But have you noticed any places it avoids, times it disappears? I thought back. There was one time, I said slowly, when I was in my truck. I'd been hearing it on the handheld all day, little bits here and there. Then I got into the truck, shut the door, and nothing. Radio went quiet. When I got out again, it was back. Metal shell, she said. Not perfect, but maybe enough to mess with its ability to interact. You're saying we need a giant Faraday cage to hide in? Mark asked. I'm saying, she said, if this thing's riding the infrastructure, then we might be able to trap it in a structure designed to guide electrical fields. Like a substation, I said suddenly. Both of them looked at me. There's an old switching yard outside town, I said, decommissioned a few years back. Still standing but disconnected. I know because someone in the club once suggested we mount an antenna there, and the city shut it down. Elena's eyes lit up in a way that made me both hopeful and deeply nervous. Metal framework, transmission lines, grounded structures, she said. If we can lure it in there and then manipulate the field around it, we might be able to force it into a more, localized form. And then what? Mark asked. Pray it doesn't fry us? Then we figure out how to overcook it, she said, like a bug in a zapper. I swallowed. How do we lure it? I asked. She looked at the rig, then at me. It likes you, she said, and it likes radios. We met 2 more times before we did anything. The first time, we went out to the substation in daylight. It sat at the edge of town, past the last gas station, where the road narrowed and the trees grew thicker. The chain link fence around it was rusted but intact, with a faded "No trespassing, city property" sign hanging at an angle. Inside, rows of metal frames, insulators, and bus bars sat like the skeleton of some dead industrial beast. No lines connected to it anymore. The high-tension cables that had once fed it were gone, rerouted along a different path. What remained was a maze of grounded metal. Elena walked along the fence, eyes scanning the structures. "This is perfect," she said. "That's not a word I'd use," Mark muttered. "We'd have to bring our own power," she went on. "Generator, maybe two. Run our rig in here." She pointed to a small control building near the fence. "Feed the signal into some of this metal. Make the whole place sing or on whatever frequency it likes." "And then what?" I asked. "Turn it on and hope it shows up?" "We need something more specific than that," she agreed. "From what you've told me, it responds more when you address it directly. It likes certain phrases, names." "Mine," I said. "Yeah," she said. "We'll use that. You talk on the band like you always do, but this time we'll be radiating from a big metal spiderweb instead of your backyard stick. If it's drawn to you, into that pattern, into strong RF fields, it will come. And we'll be inside with it," Mark said. "Great plan." "Not unless you want to die," she said. "We'll need to be in a shielded spot. That control building might work. Thick walls, grounded. I'll rig up some extra shielding, maybe line one more room with mesh." "Let me get this straight," Mark said. "We're going to break into city property, haul in generators and the high-power transmitter, intentionally attract a murderous EM entity, and then what? Flip a giant imaginary kill switch?" "Not imaginary," Elena said. "If we can monitor the field inside, we'll know when it's here. The moment it condenses enough to interact strongly, we hit it with everything we've got. Every watt we can shove through those structures, force a surge that it can't dissipate." "Like overloading a line," I said. "You pop a breaker." "Except in this case," she said, "you pop whatever passes for its body." "And if we misjudge?" Mark asked. "Then we might fry ourselves instead," she said bluntly. "Or it might jump to another line or just get stronger," she shrugged. "You're the one who said we can't just sit around and wait," she added. He grimaced. He wasn't wrong, and neither was she. The thing had killed once already. It was getting bolder, more widespread. The longer we did nothing, the greater the chance it would decide to pay one of us a personal visit, like it had to Tom. That night, back in my garage, I turned on the rig. The pattern was there within minutes. Up, down, up, down. I keyed up. "You're out there?" I said. "I know you are. I've seen you on the street, heard you in other people's radios." The static surged hungry. "John." "We're going to meet," I said. "Soon." I let go of the PTT. Silence for a heartbeat. Then very softly, in a warped version of my own voice, Soon. The lights flickered. On my workbench, one of the multimeters, powered off, beeped once. I smiled, even though my stomach was a knot of ice. Good, I whispered. Come when I call. We picked a night with clear skies and low solar activity. Quiet band, easy to spot anomalies. We loaded Marx's truck with gear, generator, fuel, extension cords, my HF rig, packed in foam. A set of speakers, a laptop. Elena brought coils of copper wire, rolls of mesh, a portable spectrum analyzer, and a look of grim determination. We waited until after midnight to slip through a cut in the substation fence. The place felt different at night. The metal frames loomed against the stars like alien machinery. Dry grass whispered under our boots. The air smelled faintly of rust and old ozone. This is a bad idea, Mark muttered for the 10th time. It is, Helena agreed, but so is doing nothing. We set up in the control building. It was small, cinder block walls, one heavy steel door, and a few dusty windows we quickly covered with mesh. Elena drove a ground rod outside and ran a thick cable inside, tying every piece of mesh and metal together into one big grounded shell. Not perfect, she said, tightening the last clamp, but better than nothing. We set the rig up on an old metal desk, ran coax out through a hole in the wall, up into the yard, where Elena had connected it to a section of the metal framework she'd isolated from the ground. "You're turning the substation into a giant antenna," Mark said. "Exactly," she said. "We're going to light this place up." The generator sat outside, chugging quietly. We had enough fuel for a few hours. After that, either we'd be done or it would. I sat in front of the rig, hands on the controls, heart pounding. "Last chance to back out," I said. Mark took a long breath. "If we back out, it finds us anyway," he said. "At least here, we picked the battlefield." Elena nodded once. "Let's do it." I flipped the rig on. The familiar hiss filled the room. For a few minutes, it was just normal, atmospheric crackle. Then, because this thing apparently had a sense of drama, the noise floor dipped. Up, down, up, down. Strong, much stronger than at home. "You seeing that?" Elena murmured, eyes on the analyzer. The display bloomed with clusters of activity, where there should have been none. "Yeah," I said. I keyed up. "This is John," I said. "We're here. We're waiting." The channel surged, rattling the metal in the room. "John." The voice was so loud it made the speaker cone buzz. On the analyzer, the signal spread, smearing across a range of frequencies like ink in water. "It's coupling into the structure," Elena said, almost to herself. "It's everywhere in here." Mark swallowed. "Can it get in here?" "If my shielding holds, no," she said. "If I screwed up..." She didn't finish. I started talking. I didn't have a script, I just spoke, letting my fear and anger and exhaustion pour out. I called its name, if it had one. I called it Black Static, the thing in the wires, Parasite. I taunted it. I begged it. I repeated phrases it had thrown back at me in the past. It responded. sometimes with echoes, sometimes with broken laughter, my own voice and others mashed together, sometimes with bursts of pure roaring noise that shook dust from the ceiling. Minutes passed, then an hour. The pattern got stronger, more insistent. I could feel it in my bones, like standing under high tension lines. Outside, the substation groaned. That's the only way I can describe it. The metal structures vibrated audibly, as if a wind no one else felt was blowing through them. On the analyzer, one cluster of activity began to dominate. A spike that grew taller, narrower, brighter. "It's condensing," Elena said. Her voice trembled. "It's focusing into a narrower bandwidth, but the amplitude is off the charts." "Is this what he wanted?" Mark asked. "This is our shot," she said. "We might not get another." I took a deep breath. "Come on then," I said into the mic. "You want me? Here I am." The spike leaped. The entire building shook. The lights flickered, then steadied as the generator roared, straining. For a moment, all three of us heard it, not through the speaker but in the air itself. "John." The shout rattled in my chest like a physical force. The mesh on the windows hummed, little arcs of bluish light dancing along it. "I think it's in the yard," Elena said, voice thin. "How do we know?" Mark demanded. She pointed at the analyzer. The main spike had split in two, one on our frequency, one slightly offset, drifting back and forth like a heartbeat. "It's got a body now," she said, "or something close enough." "Then hit it," I said. "Do it, now." She hesitated. "Once I do, we might lose it permanently," she said. "If this fails, if we don't, it kills more people," I said. "Do it." She nodded, jaw tight. We'd prepared for this. While I had been talking, she'd quietly been ramping the generator up, reading capacitors and switches she'd rigged into the substation structure. Now, she flipped a sequence of those switches in quick succession. Outside, the metal frames crackled. I heard a low, rising whine, like a turbine spooling up. "We're dumping everything through that section of buswork," she shouted over the noise. "If it's riding that field, it's about to get one hell of a ride." The static on the rig went insane. It wasn't a pattern anymore. It was a scream. The S-meter slammed into the peg and stayed there. The speaker emitted a jagged roar that tasted like coins in my mouth. My feelings ached. The mesh on the walls sparked. I caught a glimpse through a tiny gap in the window covering. Out in the yard, between two towering metal frames, something was forming. A human shape, taller than me by a head, flanked by humming insulators. Its body was made of black snow, crawling and boiling, shot through with arcs of light. Its limbs jerked and spasmed as the fields ripped through it. It was trying to hold together and failing. For an instant, its face turned toward the building, a maelstrom of black and white, with two voids where eyes might be. Inside those voids I saw flashes of images: Tom falling, the street outside my house, my own garage, distorted and wrong. Then Elena cranked the last switch. The generator screamed. Electricity roared through the yard. Some of the old insulators shattered, sending glass shards into the dark. The metal frames rang like struck bells the thing convulsed, its outstretched arm reaching toward us, fragmented at the elbow. The forearm dissolved into a spray of sparks that arced to the nearest grounded beam. Bits of black static splattered across the metal, fizzed and faded. Its scream rose and rose, then cut off mid-howl. For a split second, the yard was silent and still. Then every piece of metal for 100 yards lit up with tiny, crawling threads of light. The smell of ozone hit us like a wall. The rig went dead, its display cutting to black. The generator coughed once and died. We sat in total darkness, ears ringing, lungs burning from the ozone. Did we get it? Mark whispered. I don't know, Elena whispered back. We stayed in that dark building for what felt like hours but was probably 10 minutes, barely breathing. Slowly, my eyes adjusted. Moonlight seeped in around the edges of the mesh, painting faint silver lines on the floor. Nothing moved. No static, no hum. Just the faint ticking of cooling metal. Elena fumbled for her flashlight and aimed it at the analyzer. Its screen was dead. Generator's gone, she said. We blew something. Yeah, Mark said hoarsely. Hopefully the thing and not just the equipment. We unbarred the door and stepped out into the yard. It looked like a bomb had gone off. Some of the metal frames were twisted, their supports warped from the sudden surge of heat. A few insulators hung in jagged halves. The grass beneath the main buswork was blackened in branching, feathery patterns reminiscent of Lichtenberg figures. Right at the center, where I'd seen the shape coalesce, the ground was scorched bare. Not burned like from a conventional fire, the soil was fused, glassy in patches, as if a lightning strike had hit it repeatedly. No sign of the static shadow, no movement in the air. I realized with a slow, spreading sense of relief that for the first time in weeks, my ears felt normal. No hiss, no faint pattern under the wind. We checked the generator, a melted mess in parts. Whatever surge we'd created had backfed enough to fry it despite Elena's precautions. Worth it, she muttered, staring at the damage. We hiked back to the road in silence. No one spoke until we were in the truck, heading back toward town. What if we just beat it back for a while? Mark asked. What if it regenerates? Maybe, Elena said, but whatever that was, it was a serious disruption. Things that live in fields and patterns don't do well with that much chaos shoved into them. It was screaming, I said quietly. They both looked at me. When you hit it, I said, it wasn't just noise, it sounded afraid. Good, Mark said. Good, maybe next time it will think twice before it crawls out of somebody's tower and cooks them. We didn't talk much after that. We were exhausted, brain fried. There's only so much existential horror a person can process in one night. I went home, stumbled into the shower and stood under the water until it went cold. Then I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I went to bed and slept. No static, no dreams of Hess, just dark, heavy, blessed oblivion. The next few days were quiet, Too quiet, part of me thought. I powered up the rig at my usual times. Band noise, normal chaos, no dips, no patterns. I listened to the local repeaters, the weather broadcasts, even the static between stations on my car radio. Nothing. People mentioned some weird power fluctuation near the old substation on Facebook. Someone posted a blurry photo of a blue glow over the structure around 3 a.m. Conspiracy nuts blamed secret government tests. The city said nothing. In the ham circles, talk of the strange noise faded. Someone mentioned in passing that they hadn't heard that breathing static in a while. Another said he'd chalked it up to the usual gremlins. No one pushed. Tom's death receded into the background hum of daily tragedies. Life went on. For months, there was no sight of it. I let myself believe we'd done it, that we'd actually managed to wrap and kill something that lived in the wires. Elena fixed my generator, mostly. She refused to take money, muttering something about hazard pay offset. Mark started making jokes again on the net, his old self creeping back. I went back to enjoying the hiss of the band as just noise again, comforting, random, meaningless. Almost. It took about 3 months for anything strange to happen again. By then, I'd relaxed. Not fully, but enough that the crunch in my shoulders had eased. Enough that stepping into the garage didn't feel like stepping into a haunted house. It was late on a Sunday. Quiet band. I just finished a contact with a guy 3 states over and was idly spinning the dial, half thinking about calling it a night. The noise floor dipped. My heart lurched into my throat. I froze, staring at the S-meter. Up, down, up, down. Soft. Softer than I remembered, barely above the background. I reached for the power switch, instinct screaming to kill it. My hand stopped halfway. I hesitated. If it was back, I needed to know. I keyed up. "This is John," I said. "If that's you, we ended this. You're not welcome here." Silence. Then very faintly, barely more than a curl of sound in the static. "John." The voice didn't sound like me this time. It didn't sound like anyone I knew. It sounded tired, frayed, hurts. I swallowed. "What are you?" I asked. "What do you want?" "Don't know," it said. The words broke, fragments dissolving into crackle. "Dark, cold, no place." The S-meter twitched. A second, different pattern moved under the first. A faint, higher-pitched flutter. "Hurts," the voice repeated. For a moment, I felt something that could almost have been pity. Except for the memory of Tom's burned hands, the scream in the substation, the months of whispered static in my walls. "You shouldn't have come back," I said. "You called." The words slid through the noise like knives. "You spoke." I answered. The guilt hit me then, cold and heavy. All those nights I talked into the dark, all those invitations, all those "if you hear me, respond." What if this thing hadn't been malevolent at first, but what if it had just been something lost in the EMC, reaching out, learning from me, becoming more by reflecting what it heard? What if I'd helped build the thing that killed my friend? You used him, I said, anger spiking. You killed him. You crawled into his tower and cooked him from the inside. Silence. Then, softly, hungry. Any pity I'd felt evaporated. Never again, I said. We stopped you once, we'll do it again if we have to. Can't, the voice whispered. Small, now, bright, hurts. I don't care, I said. I reached for the power switch. Mark. I froze. The voice shredded and wrong had said his name. Mark, he hears. My teeth clenched. If you touch him, I said, if you so much as flicker a light in his house, I'll drag 100 generators out to that yard and turn them all on at once. I'll burn every substation in this state to glass. Silence. Then, as if from very far away, no more. The pattern weakened. Up, down, up, down. Each cycle fainter than the last. Quiet, it whispered. There was a long, drawn-out sign in the static, like a wind passing over a microphone 1,000 miles away. Then, nothing. The band snapped back to normal. Someone 2 kilohertz up was arguing about antenna gains, like the world hadn't just shifted under my feet. I sat there for a long time, hand on the now silent rig, listening to ordinary noise. I called Mark. You hear anything weird tonight? I asked. Nothing, he said. Being quiet. You okay? Yeah, I lied. Just checking. I didn't tell him what it had said. What good would it do? So that's it. That's the story of the black static. You can believe it or not, it's your time, your ears. I'm not out here trying to convince the world of anything. There is no way to prove it now anyway. The substation's scheduled for demolition next year. My recordings don't capture the feeling of it, the way the noise crawled into the bones. I can tell you this much. I haven't heard the pattern again since that last night. I still get on the air, carefully. I don't talk to the empty spaces anymore. I don't invite anything to answer. When the band goes quiet, I let it stay quiet. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is still and the wind is just right, I think I hear a faint rise and fall in the distance. Not on the rigs, in the lines outside, in the hum of the fridge, in the buzz of a streetlight down the road. Up, down, up, down. Maybe it's just my brain tuned to a pattern it can't unlearn. Or maybe, when we blasted that thing in the yard, we didn't kill it completely. Maybe we just smashed it into fragments, scattered them across the grid. Little broken pieces of hunger and mimicry buried in the noise. Floor of modern life. If that's true, maybe that's worse. Because here's the thing, you're wrapped in it right now. In your phone, your Wi-Fi, your smart TV, your car. All those invisible lines of force humming through the air. And somewhere in that endless sea of static, something might be listening. So, if you're up late one night, dial drifting across a quiet band, and you notice the noise floor dip in a way that doesn't feel natural, if the hiss starts to rise and fall in slow, deliberate waves, if under it all you think you hear someone whisper your name in a broken version of your own voice, do yourself a favor. Don't answer.